Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I have a big apology for you all because I was at the Glastonbury Music Festival last week, and to my horror, I had no mobile connection, zero mobile coverage, no mobile data, which essentially meant I was completely offline for 5 days. And I think that is the only time in about 5 or 6 years I've completely gone rogue, gone dark, gone off the radar. And while I was away, the podcast episode, something went wrong and they didn't publish on the schedule. So essentially, I think you went 4 days without anything. And then when I returned and I had mobile coverage, I hit the old publish button and you suddenly got bombarded with 5 or 6 episodes at once. So first of all, a big apology for giving you feast and famine on the podcast, because I do try to ensure that there is an episode go out every single day. I record 10 interviews a week and I'm always about 2 weeks ahead to give me a little bit of time should I get called away to a last minute thing, or maybe I get ill or holiday or anything like that. So I always try and make sure you've got an episode. So first of all, a big apology from me. I do take serving you, my loyal audience, very seriously. But enough of my adventures and on with today's show. Now, a decision intelligence company called Peak recently appeared on my radar. So I invited them on the show today to explore how data can be the silver bullet for retail businesses looking to optimize in this world of rising inflation and supply chain struggles. And even though Tom Summerfield found himself in Canary Wharf, London for the day, the retail director at Peak still agreed to have a quick chat with me about how their technology is helping retailers, including Nike and ASOS, to name but a few, stay ahead of the curve. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to London, where you can join me and Tom in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. It's really cool to be here chatting to you, Neil. So I'm Tom. I am the retail director at a business called Peak. We're a decision intelligence company, which means we use AI for a whole bunch of stuff. And my view is everything in retail. We have a lot of retail customers. We play in the CPG and manufacturing industries and some other stuff as well, but retail is like our maturest sort of vertical. So yeah, that's I have a view of everything we do for our customers.
I'm curious, we're talking AI, we're talking retail here. What's your origin story? Have you always been passionate about tech? How did those worlds collide and put you on this path you're on now?
My background is not data and analytics at all. I like to think my background is like common sense, to be honest. And this just happens to be the best way of sorting some stuff out in for retail businesses. I've been at Peak just over 2 years now, but I've been around Peak quite a lot longer than that because I was at Foot Asylum before that, who were who you may know, a multi-channel retailer in the UK, and we were working with Peak. So my role at Foot Asylum was I was consulting for them, and it was like I was living between the e-com, marketing and retail arms of the business and sort of trying to own that customer thing. I was interested in I thought there's something in the data, like knitting the channels together and stuff. I didn't quite know what it would be actually. So I guess it's not been some master plan to get here, clearly. But yeah, it just so happens, in my opinion, I think it's not opinion really, I think I could prove this, that in the granularity of data is how you serve consumers the best right now. And I guess we'll maybe get into a bit of detail on that together. But that's how I ended up. My background is like fashion wholesale and sort of brands and stuff like that before that.
Love it. And obviously I invited you on the podcast today to talk about retail tech. So just to set the scene in our conversation today, can you tell me a little bit more about why retail survival in the current climate is likely to boil down to the tech that they have at their disposal?
I was chatting to a leader of a big business a few weeks ago, and he was actually saying, we were talking about Peak, and the conversation was on a level, shall we say, and he's a bit like, he's like, Tom, I've got every system under the sun, seemingly. I have to believe I've got the best people available to do it. like why is like AI specifically, but just the wider tech fit? Yeah, another question's position at the wider tech piece. I think everyone is talking about data now. So I think the difference is that a lot of avenues have been exhausted where like human capability, there's some amazing human capability. It's not about replacing humans, any of this, but like enabling humans to like leverage powerful tech is like, there is direct correlations with businesses that are winning and businesses that are, not winning, and their approach and openness to tech. And I think I have really gone off the word like innovation, because I think when people seem like identify certain bits of tech, maybe, and it doesn't have to be AI, this, I think just general tech as innovation, I think there are lots of businesses still, less so now, because I think there's a lot of them, it's changing, but look at it and go like, that sounds like a next year job, that. Because it's a little bit like in a future state, whereas actually we know, and you'll know this, from all the chats that you have like all the time, is like, it's no longer innovation. It's like a non-negotiable. You've got to be like having this sort of tech first sort of approach to challenges, I think, because only then can you explore like the depths of detail that need to be to get you where you need to be, I think. So yeah, so there's a clear divide, I think, in businesses that just move a little slower, or a distinction, at least, businesses moving a little bit slower and quicker with tech, and the result, the prosperity accordingly.
And you mentioned prosperity there. Of course, at the moment, with people listening all over the world, we've got the big problem with inflation. So I'm curious, what is the impact of inflation on retailers at the moment, and how can they best manage this against the ever-shrinking costs and the people that they're consumers, of course, and they've got less to spend? How is that taking shape at the moment?
Because everyone's just scratching their heads, I think, aren't they? And it's like, so the consumers feel the brunt of it. Suppliers just get argued with and stuff. But actually, there is so much fat in people's supply chains, value chain. Not everyone's. Like, some people are doing some nice stuff, across their sort of whole value chain. But unless you are in the granularity of your data and leveraging it to make sort of predictions, then it is just going to be suboptimal what you're doing. And I think this cost of living thing that's going on. So, because I'm always like reluctant to talk about like, this is obviously the latest, and it's a thing, like the latest thing. But like before it was obviously the pandemic, which was a humanitarian disaster, clearly. But then it's like, and before that it was Brexit, and before it was something else. Like, you should just have been doing this stuff anyway, basically, because you're trying to serve your consumers better. And there's a couple of good examples in the marketplace, actually. There's like a food prep company I saw that are leveraging this, some cool technology to try and alleviate this, where they can be a bit more agile in their supply chain, to try and be a bit more robust against like the cost that's going up. Right, we'll use a bit less of that. We'll pivot here. I think that it's going to paper over a load of cracks in people's businesses, and this will be a scapegoat for people not progressing and adapting and sort of relentlessly trying to make all their processes and supply chains and value chains better. And it's just the latest on vogue thing that people can whinge about, to be honest, is, I guess, my slightly cynical opinion on it. And I think the way to be robust about is, unfortunately, people are going to have to be open to this. It is sophisticated how you fix it. Like, it's not like, because we've got the teams of people, we've got loads of tech all hanging around in businesses. So you go like, surely we can get, no, it's deeper, it's further. Like, it's more advanced, I think, to be robust against it, which I think is why people just go, they're sort of putting their hands in the air, just going like, oh, I can't fix it. Sorry, the prices are just going to have to go up. But then the ones who are agile to it and can pull some different levers are going to come out of it. This is like an opportunity for them to serve their consumers in a way that is more robust against these like prices seemingly spiraling. Yeah.
And you mentioned a few moments ago about the importance of data. And another reason I was excited to get you on the podcast was to expand on that a little. So can I ask you just talk a little about why retailers need to stop viewing data in arrears and instead focus on more complex and cross-departmental what-if scenarios that are actually informed by data analysis to make data-driven decisions?
Yeah, right. So there's a big distinction here between sort of like great data analysis and then predictive data, but like to your point there, most people are just trying to get through the day and wrestle with the just like seeing their data, basically, which is that data analysis. And there's some cool stuff, the Power BIs of the world and that sort of stuff that like allow a better view of your data. And that really is, I like to talk about this sort of like crawl, walk, run. It's not, I've clearly haven't made that up. It's a well-trodden path, but this crawl, walk, run, everyone is just crawling when it comes to like getting like a view of their data. And especially if you imagine you're a merchandiser who has to make like important rebuy decisions or like a really important pricing decision, just downloading some data from different systems to just try and get it into some spreadsheets and have a look at it just to make a decision is hard and onerous, and you have to be like a spreadsheet ninja to be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to do that. So and that's just to get a view of it. Never mind, and then you've still got to make the decision, which could be wrong. Like a lot of people are, would probably back themselves if they could just see more data, then they would make a better decision. And I'd agree with that as well. Like merchandising example, for example, merchandisers tend to be smart, analytical, tradery types who will make good decisions if they can just see more data. But they won't have access to some systems. They won't maybe have the presence of mind, possibly, and it's not their fault. Like to say, like I always think, like with a pricing decision. So for a multi-channel retailer, they'll be looking at like their typical weekly sales, stock on hand. Maybe they've got some more intake coming in, various other metrics that are in there. If they could see how many people are adding this to the cart and not buying it on the website, for example, you could go, I tell you what, I thought we were going to have to hit this really hard in the sale. We're only just going to need to touch this and it's going to go because look, there's real interest around it. Now, I bet if you stopped 99 out of 100 merchandisers in the corridors of wherever, 99 of them wouldn't have access to like Google Analytics in their business or wouldn't have access to that sort of information. Or if they have, it's hard work getting hold of it on a regular cadence and stuff. So it's like a data visibility thing, I think, is the crux of it at the start. But then, yeah, like you suggested, then the predictive bit is way beyond most people's, imagination, really, because they just haven't maybe seen the tech yet that can help that, and that's a thing. But there's this big distinction between people sort of getting good at data, but it's actually just like analysis versus actually making a prediction. The reason why there's not tons of people doing it nicely yet is because it's hard. Basically, you need like the data set, then you need the tech, then you might need the people with the smarts to do it. So it's hard. But and I think we're in an interesting moment now where I think the retail industry is more aware now. Some of it is acutely aware, but like more aware of this distinction of like, right, the next step is to try and get some predictions going. That's definitely the mood that we feel speaking to folks all the time. I think we're moving into the walk phase maybe for this sort of maturity in lots of businesses.
Excellent. And that does feel like a great moment to introduce everyone listening to Peak. So can you tell the listeners a little bit more about the problems that your tech solves at Peak and also what your USP in the market is?
So I said we're a decision intelligence company.
Yeah.
What that really means is we use AI for commercial goals. So we help people make money, we help people save money, to strip the romance right out of it. But I guess that's what gets people out of bed in most mornings. So, and what we've created over our 7 or 8 year journey so far is a platform that does some of those does all the key things that you need to leverage AI and get to those predictions like you just touched on. So the first bit is we have to create the data set. Like you have to get your data like AI ready. Like everyone always like apologizes for the state of their data pretty much before we get to see it. Like there's nothing we haven't seen, Some people got really nice data, like really neatly organized in the cloud somewhere. That's great. And they're just a little bit further on maybe than some folks, and that's okay. So crucially, we get that data in and ready. Then we have a growing team, nearly 100 data scientists at Peak who do some cool, clever stuff with it, build the models, the data models, train them for whichever the output is. And I'll come to that in a second, what we actually do with it. And then crucially, it's about like putting it back in your business, because the adoption of this stuff is obviously the bit that matters. There's some stats sort of flying around from Gartner and people like that about like 80-90% of data projects fail and all this. And I think that is a thing. And I think it's because maybe the use case wasn't bottomed out. Maybe there's a bit of a disconnect between a tech team and a business team. There's lots of, and we exist to like to stop that and make this adoption and like people using AI in their day-to-day, like always on processes. And we play in sort of 3 like business team areas. So like we call it customer intelligence. That's working with like e-commerce folks, marketeers, digital consumery aiming people. And that's all about like personalization, recommenders on websites, segmenting databases, that sort of stuff. That's actually what a lot of the stuff that I was doing when I was at Foot Asylum. So I feel I like that stuff. Then in demand intelligence is working with merchandisers, buyers, planners, and that's all about buying and rebuying, allocating and replenishing stock, and then pricing and marking down stock and using AI in. We've got lots of applications that talk to those worlds. And then supply intelligence is all about like logistics, warehouse optimizations, sort of gnarlier supply chain challenges. Really cool from an efficiency standpoint, especially in the CPG and manufacturing industries where we have some cool customers, where there's big sort of sustainability initiatives that are really like moving now. So we do some work there as well. Yeah, but we're always just focused on like creating value, to be honest, trying to just like, lots of people now, like I said, like this moment in the industry, it feels like where people are like open to the idea of like, right, okay, like I get it, like AI makes everything a bit better. I'm open to that concept now, but you're just still gonna have to show me how. Like I'm gonna need a little bit of help finding where we start. And again, that's a big thing that we hopefully go on these sort of journeys with our customers, build partnerships with our customers and create some value. Because if you get a bit of value, some numbers up on the board early, then everyone settles down a bit and just goes, oh, right, yeah, it's not that crazy. It's not like science fiction or anything. It's like, oh, yeah, you're helping me buy more accurately, or you're helping me make smarter markdown decisions, or you actually, the recommendations on our website are way better than they were before, you know. But like we would talk about like that sort of like the data points at play, maybe like a merchandiser can or can't see in a day-to-day thing. Like imagine if your recommendation engine on your website knew if there was a problem in your supply chain, like if it could take data points from your supply chain, and this links to the cost of living chat like right now. Whereas if you had a recommender on your website, in your app, in your emails, that could react to when there's like, we've got a problem. We've got a problem in our supply chain. Like, can you do something different? And the AI would be making these, like, would be the machine learning, which is a subset of like AI, would be reacting and behaving differently. And this is where people talk about like agility in your supply chain, in your value chain. That's what that point around the cost of living thing means through this lens, in my opinion. It would allow you to flex and be more agile to like prevailing headwind, or just headwinds in your world. So yeah, got some cool customers from the likes of like Nike, Foot Asylum, AO.com, ASOS, Pepsi, Molson Coors, like loads of large enterprises that are really embracing this. It's not innovation. It's like no. This is like helping us win. This is like competitive edge, and it's So that's a little bit about Peak. Hopefully that does the job.
Yeah, some big names in there. And I'm curious, let's say we've got a retail manager listening somewhere in the world, and similar to that guy you mentioned a few moments ago, who said, I've got every bit of tech going, and their doors are constantly being bombarded, and people ringing and emailing with the latest must-have tech solutions, saying things like AI. Many will say AI, even though their system hasn't got AI, just to get their foot in the door. So for those people, I mean, what's special about your platform and your approach, and the kind of advantage that it can offer over other solutions in that crowded market?
Cool. So I think that something that, and I guess because I was on the customer side before joining Peak, I fear maybe I have a cool insight to this, is that I always thought of Peak as like a people business rather than a tech business, really, because it's quite scary, some of this like tech, like, and that's allowed, I think. like if people going like AI, nope, no thanks. That's like robots, isn't it? Flying around and stuff. It's like, no. The people element of this is like massive to actually make the transformation happen. So like having good tech and stuff, which we think we've got some really cool tech. Of course, we would think that, but it is like just table stakes in some respects, because then you need the people to like actually make it a thing. So I think that, and I know from some of our like, competitors who've got sort of data sciencey platforms, we feel that we give our customers that extra edge because we've got this like layer of deep industry expertise. We've got some pre-built sort of applications that exist, and we've done this before. We've done it a bunch of times. So hopefully that gets you, and this sort of almost like, I call it like almost like belligerent focus on value is really important. That's like the thing that matters basically, because I guess we're not running a charity yet today. It costs money. So it has to like, you got to turn it into some, that's really, really, really important for us. And there's always a cool energy when that's happening, and it grows, and we want to grow with our customers. We don't like getting new customers and having to then go separate ways. This like we want to grow with customers and stuff. And I think that like comforting layer of like support is helpful for that. I think from the platform itself, there is actually some genuinely cool proprietary like bits to it that like we've opened it up to actually data science communities now. So if you're a data scientist, we don't have to do the data science, like you can do it. So people like Nike, for example, got big data science teams, like some of our other customers are as well. And like in theory, they could just use it without us. So we think we're quite well positioned from a sort of procurement perspective to be a real future-proof option, because I think a lot of businesses are growing teams with this capability themselves, and they might not want like someone else to be doing it. They want to be controlling it. So we can mold and adapt to whichever way a business, wherever they are on the journey and however they're going to go on a journey. Like we're very adaptable in that respect as well, which seems to be a popular thing.
And just to bring to life everything that we've talked about today, I appreciate you probably can't mention any names here, but do you have any use cases or client stories that you could share that would just bring everything that we're talking about to life?
Yeah, we've got a bunch that we can talk about actually. With that sort of like the cost of living thing, as a pertinent and rightly so topic, there was one example that I can share. It was Pretty Little Thing actually, and this was through like the lockdowns through the pandemic, and we helped them in the sort of what we call the customer intelligence space, and they were able to leverage AI to help them predictively select cohorts of customers that allowed them to trade more robustly through that period, because it was obviously just sort of chaos, wasn't it, like through that, loads and loads of like changing behaviors. But because an AI can help them predict what their customers were going to do, it allowed them to trade through that with some prosperity, like we said before. So I guess that's maybe a cool, pertinent example. And then, I mean, there are a bunch of others. We've got loads on our website if people are really interested, to go and have a look at like some real life examples of it. But yeah, like serving your consumer digitally through the pandemic was a way that we were able to support Pretty Little Thing through that. Yeah.
Of course, that retail manager that's listening to this conversation today he or she's probably feeling incredibly inspired now, going into the office tomorrow morning, and they're going to be bombarded with a load of questions from the tech team there. So for the IT teams listening, what does the product service implementation actually look like, and how do you measure success of that too?
I mean, from an actual like practical standpoint, we invest a lot of sort of time and energy on our side up front before any sort of official engagement takes place, because we want to bottom out whether there is sufficient value to make this an exciting thing to get, because everyone's got a lot of stuff on always, especially IT teams, beleaguered, like IT teams typically fighting fires and, trying to improve and transform what they're doing existing. So it's got to be good when if we're going to, disrupt their world with some some of this stuff. So we'll always have lots of discovery. Well, not too much actually. It's not too onerous, but and bottoming out the use case. And then when that is being identified, we normally take a bit of data or something, and we'll go away and we'll crunch it and come back with what we think is the size and scale of the opportunity. And it's a real collaboration then, and everyone needs to agree that and we'll always be prudent, typically, because there's no point in not being really. This is the minimum that we think it's going to be. It's normally quite cool, and then we would keep a tight view on that, especially in the opening weeks and months of any engagement and project with our customers. We talked about adoption. Adoption's always a big one to track in the early months as well, because these recommendations or outputs from the AI are only useful if someone's going to love them and use them. So that's a big thing to track. And yeah, we have a customer success team that is in sometimes daily touch points with all of our customers. So we're dealing with things up the stream. So it guides it, and we've done it a bunch of times before now. So typically that value comes to life if there's some little bumps in the road, which sometimes there are. We move past them, and that's why we sort of treat it as a partnership, because some of the prizes at the end of this are massive. Can be really business alteringly cool stuff. So it's normally worth working through some little bumps in the road and stuff, because transformation is tricky sometimes, but normally it's normally rewarding enough at the end. So I guess and we're just really open, to be honest. It's one of our values as a company. So we're always super open whether we think this is a thing or not as well, or maybe we think the timing isn't quite. If you can get this, or there's a data point, we need it, because sometimes getting access to the data at the start is something we just have to work through. We've got a bunch of connectors already built into all sorts of incumbent systems that businesses are using. So, but once the data is in, then we're off and running then. Yeah.
Wow, incredibly cool. So the question I've got to ask now is, what's next? Where do you go from here, and what excites you about the future and the role that Peak will play in this future too?
So one of the coolest so the market maturing around this is probably the best bit of this right now, because when I was at Footside doing it was pretty early that. I think it's fair to say it's a bit different now. We talked about the word innovation earlier. This is no longer oh, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? This is how we, you touched on it before, this is how we actually not stay afloat. It's a bit dramatic, but this is how we are competitive in our sub-vertical or whatever. It's vital, basically. Every trade event, you must go to those. Trade events, listening to, everyone is talking about data. Most people are still right at the start of it, but like I said, this maturity is occurring now. Some businesses are doing really, really cool stuff with it. Amazon are always a great example, but they're on a bit of a different level to most retailers, I would say, and they're more of they're like an operations business, aren't they, rather than a retailer maybe. But so the market maturing around this and the energy that's coming with it, and then it's creating this competitiveness that is really cool. And Peak, we believe we are the leaders in. We created this decision intelligence sort of category, and we intend to dominate it, to be honest. It's not a very humble thing to say, but we're helping our customers really, really win. So yeah, just more of the same basically, and continuing to iterate and improve our product that serves our customers so they can serve their customers, is the flywheel that is moving. Yeah.
Well, you've been on an inspirational journey, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on, sharing that, and also your origin story. But as we come full circle now, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to have a bit of fun with you, ask you to leave everyone listening with a personal inspirational note. So if there is a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist that's important to you or inspires you, or a book that we could add to our Amazon wish list, what would you leave everyone with today?
I love all types of music, but the book, I wish I read more books, to be honest. It's a bit of a daft thing to say because it's up to me, isn't it, that? But I find myself lacking the concentration to really get into it. But Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell is the most important book that I have read. It's made me view the world differently. It's really for me personally, absolutely massive. It's quite an easy read. It's some amazing like anecdotal like research in there about like, it's basically how successful people, nobody makes it on their own. Basically, there will be a series of consequences and things that happened to you, but it's only like when you maybe get there, wherever there is, and maybe reflect and look back, that you could go, oh yeah, those things happened to me. I think it was a really important book for me, and Malcolm Gladwell, in my opinion, is a bit of a dude. I think he divides opinion, actually. I heard recently, I didn't realize that. I thought everyone just loved him, but I think some people don't dig him quite as much as I thought. But yeah, Outliers is an incredible read if no one is aware of it. Yeah.
Really? Because I recently read, well, I say I recently read it. Like you, I struggle with a concentration. So my workaround, my life hack is listen to Audible while I'm mowing the grass or taking my dog for a walk or something.
Yeah,
so
right.
I've listened to the book, and it is great. And I've listened to a few of his, and his narration is brilliant too. But I'm curious, what are what kind of criticism does he get?
Well, I think people people are not satisfied with like his word is just the gospel.
Oh.
I think like The Tipping Point was another one of his, which that changed. I read that 15 years ago, and somebody probably put me on a bit of whatever path I'm sort of on, to be honest, doing some branded stuff in the past. I just loved that as well. Like seminal moment in my sort of like life, probably reading that. It's as big as that. I think it's because, so someone like you get, people like me waxing lyrical about him, and people go, no, there might be another viewpoint, I don't want to hear it. Malcolm's right.
Don't question Malcolm, whatever you do.
Yeah, how dare you come for my Malcolm? Yeah. So So, but like, what was your reflection of Outliers? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, exactly the same, and I think it's also the role of serendipity and circumstance, and after interviewing 2,000 people on here, and I always open with that same question about what's your origin story? How did you get into tech? Nobody says, well, I wanted to get into tech since I was a young boy. It was always a series of situations that happen that put them on that path, and it's almost like the universe gives you that little nudge in the right direction when you need it the most. I phoned my dad like after I finished it. I was like, Dad, I need you to read this book because I want to talk to you about it. So I was born in 1985, and I was like, it's a bit like, I mean, the Truman Show. It's a bit self-indulgent, this, isn't it? But you're like, was I just born in the right year to do what I do today? And like other people in transformation, who's sort of millennial types, of like, was it just born in the right year to know the world as analog and then go through the digital thing? Maybe, but it was making me ask questions like that. Yeah, like you said, that sort of serendipitous, like, because you could just look at them as coincidences, but maybe they're not. I don't know. It's really incredible sort of concepts, I think. Yeah. There's so many stories I could tell you about guests that I've had on here. There was one guy here, he was pitching for funding for his startup, and it was like the last throw of the dice. And he flew from somewhere like Thailand or somewhere like that to San Francisco. He went to the meeting and he failed. And that was like the end. His world came crashing down. Right. And when he was waiting at the airport at the luggage carousel, he was telling his story to somebody, and he goes, well, I'm a VC, and I love what you're doing here. This sounds great. And he ended up backing him. And then there was also another guy who had a similar idea, and he just wanted to bring his idea to life, but he needed a developer to do that. And he sat next to a developer on a plane. And it's just so many stories like that,
Yeah, I love that, because when you go far enough up the stream, it'll be like, oh, well, it was that thing perhaps that, and then actually, there's some ways where you see people in the world who maybe you think not doing so great stuff or getting away with murder and stuff, and you're going like, well, actually, and that Outliers has helped me maybe contextualize or rationalize why maybe maybe it's because this was the thing, and just helps you understand people a bit better. I took away from it. Yeah. 100%. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Before I let you go, though, I've got to ask, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about Peak, find out some more on those client stories, have a look around. What's the best starting point for everything? Yeah,
I reckon peak.ai, the website. We're on all the sort of social stuff, LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff, but peak.ai is continually sort of like getting all on the website, all that stuff on there. So definitely start there. I mean, if people are really keen, they can hit me up. But there's probably more intelligent people than me at Peak that can help get this stuff moving. But yeah, the website would be the one. Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll add a link to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. So much value, so much gold you've delivered today, especially around the importance of data. And more businesses and retailers are reaching that data maturity now. I think we're moving on far from that garbage in, garbage out. I think we're starting to get those right data models, and people need to get up to speed with that. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story with me today.
Really appreciate you having me on, Neil. Thanks very much.
What a great guy, an incredibly cool topic too. And if you work in retail or retail tech, please, I invite you all to share your insights with me by emailing me at techblogwriter@outlook.com or sliding into the DMs on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. And maybe if we all share our insights and experiences, we can all learn a thing or two together. So keep your messages coming in and questions and pictures to come on the podcast. But obviously, today has all been about decision intelligence and the world of retail and retail tech. But what are we going to cover tomorrow? Yes, it's time for me to spin the wheel of fortune, which will determine what topic in tech and business we go after tomorrow. Where it stops, nobody knows. And I'm not even going to tell you where it stops. And for that, I'm afraid you're going to have to join me again tomorrow. But a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.